Put your seatbelts on and get ready for the ride. We're the freaking New York Jets, so we're built for this shit.
Hello, welcome to another episode of In the Trenches with Gang Green. I'm your host, Bubbs. Today is Monday, August 4th. Hopefully everybody's having a good day so far today. This is episode 591 of the In the Trenches with Gang Green podcast. I thank you, as always, for joining me. For those tuning in on YouTube, make sure to please like and subscribe. Of course, appreciate all of those tuning in on all the different audio podcast platforms. And today we are recapping day number 10 of New York Jets training camp. As always, I will give you my biggest takeaways from what took place on the field out at One Jets Drive this afternoon. And we'll also take a look at some comments. Aaron Glenn met the media before practice today. Joe Tittman, Quantez Stiggers, and Elijah Vera Tucker also all met the media, so we'll break down some comments made from those guys a little bit later on. As always, though, before we get to that later on, we'll talk about my biggest takeaways from day number 10 here for the New York Jets as they start up another week of training camp. It's game week. The New York Jets play a football game this week. I know it's just preseason, but still hard not to get excited about a football game that will be on our TV with this New York Jets team on Saturday night at Lambeau Field against the Green Bay Packers to kick off the preseason. Before we get to what took place on the field, just wanted to give you here a couple of injury updates. Aaron Glenn, of course, mentioned it in his pre-practice press conference, but I'll just sum it up here. Xavier Gipson will be out this week. Shoulder injury. Chris Boyd, shoulder injury, also out this week. Both of those injuries were suffered during the green and white scrimmage. Unfortunately for Gipson, that happened on the last play of the scrimmage. John Simpson, Quinnen Williams, still dealing with their injuries. Simpson, the back injury. Quinnen Williams, the calf injury. They were obviously out last week. They'll be out again this week, so nothing new there. Malachi Moore, who's dealing with the oblique injury, could return to practice this week, so that's certainly a positive for the rookie. Hopefully he'll be back out there very soon, potentially by the end of the week. And then two new ones. Mason Taylor missed practice today with an ankle injury, and Tyrod Taylor was on the sideline in uniform, but didn't practice dealing with a knee injury. Reports, though, neither of those are major. Obviously, Mason Taylor has had a very strong training camp, but from the looks of it, from what we've heard, doesn't seem major, maybe just a couple days, and he'll be back in the swing of things. So those are the injury updates for this New York Jets team here on this Monday. Now let's take a look at what took place on the practice field today out at One Jets Drive in Florham Park. It was another bumpy day for the offense, but I think the major consensus is, right, Friday was the best day of training camp for the offense. Saturday was, by all accounts, and I was there, saw it with my own two eyes, obviously had my in-person takeaways up on the channel. Very disappointing, very ugly practice from an offensive perspective. Obviously, we talked about the 12 penalties. So they followed up one of their better practices with one of their worst practices offensively. And today was another bumpy day offensively, but not as bad as it was on Saturday. But still, going through some of the growing pains, going through the development process with Justin Fields, going through just the growing pains that are going to happen with an offense, with a quarterback that has room to grow, with a new system, and this time of year, still early in August, where the defense is still ahead of the offense, and that's across the league. So when you take a look at what happened today, take a look at some of the 11-on-11 drills, and then we'll break down some of the red zone stuff. Fields started practice on a high note with a completion to Garrett Wilson, about 8 to 12 yards. Nice throw, caught Garrett in stride. Then an incompletion to Garrett was thrown slightly behind him, but a ball that Garrett Wilson should have caught. He had about 2 drops today, So not his best day. One of those coming on that pass during 11-on-11 drills. One of the highlights of the day came with a completion to Breece Hall, which was 50-plus yards downfield. Now, there is a chance that he was out of bounds, but that's besides the point. The fact that they're getting Breece Hall involved, the fact that he is clearly in this offense, not just as a running threat, but as a receiving threat, is something that's a positive, even on during some of these days where the offense isn't fully in sync. Another one of those days, of course, being today. But 50 yards downfield, Fields recognized the linebacker running back one-on-one matchup, threw a nice ball over the shoulder. Breece bobbled it a bit, but was able to regain it, came down with it. A big, deep chunk play there to the running back. One of the highlights of practice today for this New York Jets offense. Now, some of the red zone drills for Justin Fields had an incompletion to Lazard, almost a touchdown. Lazard was just out of bounds. Nice coverage by Michael Carter, kind of forcing him out of bounds a bit. So incomplete, but not a bad ball and a play that, good play by the corner, just out of bounds. Then he was able to get a touchdown to Stone Smart near the back line of the end zone. Stone Smart now quietly has put together about 3 to 4 good days in a row here. Had 2 touchdowns on Saturday, had a couple of nice plays on Friday, had another touchdown again today. Really starting to stack some good days here as we hit the month of August and we hit a bit of the middle part of training camp here. Obviously now 10 practices in with a joint practice set up next week against the Giants for 2 days, which obviously will be big to really evaluate this New York Jets team and this offense as a whole that's been up and down so far. But Stone Smart, a nice emergence, hopefully behind Mason Taylor here, who we went into training camp hoping to see somebody emerge there in that tight end room behind Mason Taylor from a receiving threat perspective. Because obviously, as we all know, Jeremy Rucker, 3 years in, hasn't done a lot. And Stone Smart brought in with the receiving upside. You've started to see some of that. So that was another one of the positive takeaways. But look, I just want to say this. And I know there's a lot of Jet fans out there that there's going to be that panic. There's going to be the, oh no, the offense is struggling. It's still early. It's August 4th. It's still the point of the summer, as I mentioned earlier, where the offense is typically behind the defense. And that's not just with the New York Jets. That's with 31 teams across the league. Sure, the offense is going to have good days, but the defense this time of year is always a bit in front of them. And I think you also look at Justin Fields and you look at today's practice. A lot of it was some screens. A lot of it was red zone work. There was also a couple throwaways where nobody was open. And they obviously had the 2 drops from Garrett Wilson. So while you look at Fields and you do look at some of these incompletions and some of these plays that aren't, having success, that's not all been on him. And Fields also isn't the type of quarterback where he's going to dominate in practice, right? I think when you look at Fields and you look at a lot of what the Jets might be doing with him, you don't know. I mean, there could be certain plays here where the Jets are telling him to stay in the pocket and let the play develop and not use his legs in those certain scenarios. I also think it's tough to evaluate just him overall in a practice environment because a lot of times once somebody gets near him, because there is no contact, obviously, to the quarterbacks, plays are blown dead. In a real game scenario where Fields is going to be able to break out of the pocket if the play's broken, a lot of these plays that you're seeing him throw the ball away, a lot of these plays where you're seeing him feels at times intentionally trying to stay in the pocket, which could be a coaching mechanism as well, which we see a lot of times teams do. You're not going to see that during games, right? A lot of these plays that are blown dead, a lot of these plays where a defender gets near him and the play is off, in real game scenarios, Fields can take that and utilize his legs. It's also tough as well where there is no tackling, where he's going to be able to break tackles, going to be able to make guys miss. Some of these runs that he's having are going to probably go a little bit longer in real game environments than what they are now. And that's why it's also tough to evaluate. So my whole premise in all of this is not to panic. We see all these Jet fans panicking. And, Fields this, offense looks terrible. It's August 4th, number one. Number two, you have to look at the situation and look at Fields from a player's perspective. There's a lot of times in these practices where a lot of what he does well, it's tough because there's no tackling. Again, once somebody gets near him, plays dead. There might be certain situations where they want him to stay in the pocket, let the play develop. That's not going to be the case in the games. He's going to be able to utilize his legs a lot more in the games, which is much easier to do, and you can see him do that a lot more in games than in a practice environment where you're focused more on the passing aspect. So that's just my big takeaway there. There's going to be highs, there's going to be lows, there's going to be bumps in the road. A big step will be against the Giants. Those two joint practices, you're going to want to see progress here. And I do think when you look at this offense and you look at some of these plays that aren't developing into anything and aren't any guys open and he is forced to throw the ball away or plays are being called dead because pressure eventually gets to him, while, yes, he can use his legs in real game scenarios, you do look at the receiving core here and you want to see more out of this group. And I don't think it was a coincidence that Mason Taylor missed today's practice and the offense struggled a bit. And now he was out there obviously on Saturday, but just as a whole, Fields didn't have a ton of completions today. And you're seeing a lot of throwaways because not all these guys, minus Garrett, a lot of guys behind him, struggling at times to gain separation, struggling at times to get open. And obviously, there's two parts to that. You want Angstrom to scheme guys open, and obviously the players themselves also have to get open. But that's part of it as well. Start to see some guys in this wide receiver room emerge, and we'll really start to tell how that is when they face the Giants in a joint practice and if they need to add somebody there. You also look at just the tight end room as well, right? We mentioned Mason Taylor, but behind that, it's nice to see Stone Smart start to emerge. You want to see some guys emerge there as well from a pass catching standpoint. And you've seen some positives there. My whole point is you can't just pin this all on Fields and say, Fields stinks. It's time to panic. It's August 4th. There's context to all of this. It was an up and down day. Wasn't as bad as Saturday. There's going to be good days. There's going to be bad. Friday was very good. Last 2 days, not so much. See what happens tomorrow. So that's Fields. That's the overall umbrella of the offense. When you look at the running backs, good day for them. Running backs, the run game continues to impress. And I do think that's a big positive, and that can't go unnoticed through some of the pass game struggles. The run game and the run blocking has been a really big positive. Breece Hall, we mentioned the long catch. He also had a really nice run behind Tittman to begin practice. He had another nice run where he had a really nice cut back upfield. Good vision, cut back upfield, and picked up a nice gain. He's done a really nice job of that. The vision from Breece Hall so far has been good. Really, all three of these running backs, you've seen a lot of good runs where the vision's been on point and finding a hole, hitting that hole hard, and getting to the second level and making guys miss. Braylon Allen had a good run on the left side, and Isaiah Davis also had a really nice run with a cutback. Isaiah Davis just continues to show off a good decisiveness, the ability to cut up field, and it does a very good job as well as a receiver so far in camp. Saturday, he was one of the big positives from the practice. Him and Tyrod were connecting a lot on Saturday from a receiving game perspective. He has definitely shown some growth as a pass catcher, but also on the ground. You have to like what you're seeing from these running backs and the offensive line as well, blocking for these running backs. You move over to the wide receivers, tight ends, like I mentioned, not a ton from those guys today. You had the Lazard play that was just out of bounds. Garrett, had the couple of drops. You did have the Stone Smart touchdown in the red zone at the end of practice, which was nice. Right, he's put together a nice couple days. And that's really it from a offensive perspective. Bumpy day passing, couple nice runs. That's about it. Defensively, D-line, they did have a couple run stops. They had one against Braylon Allen. So as much as the run game has been a lot, really good and has been significantly better than the run defense at times. The run defense today did have a couple wins. That's going to happen, obviously. They're not going to get beat every single play. In terms of the secondary, not, again, ton takeaways from a defense perspective, but one of the biggest stars of practice today, the biggest dominant performance of practice today was Sauce Gardner. He had a heck of a day. And I don't think that should come as a huge surprise by anybody, but it is days like today that remind you how good these guys are and what you hope Sauce can do this year in a bounce-back season for his standards, fresh off the new contract. He had 2 pass breakups against Garrett Wilson. He also forced a couple other incompletions as well. This was by far his best practice of the summer. Quincy Williams has popped off a ton this summer, and Sauce Gardner now today had one of those dominant practices. Quinnen Williams, prior to the injury a couple practices ago, had a really nice practice as well. So always nice to see when your star players dominate in a practice. But it's days like today that show you, look, Sauce in this system with the right coaching, and I'm not just saying this because of this one practice, but just who he was his first 2 seasons, very easily, this is a player that should be able to get back to being an all-pro caliber cornerback. He's won a lot of the one-on-one tackling drills, the open field tackling drills that Glenn has done. You've seen some improvement from a tackling perspective with Sauce, especially since the pads have come on. And today, you just saw the excellence in coverage. Won his battles against Garrett, had a couple other forced incompletions. A really strong day from him. Brandon Stevens also had a couple nice reps in coverage as well. He continues to put together what has been a very strong training camp for him. I think you look at Brandon Stevens as one of the nice, pleasant surprises. I think a lot of us went into training camp, myself included, expecting to be talking about Brandon Stevens and A.Z. Thomas as kind of one of those things where A.Z. Thomas was going to emerge over Brandon Stevens, but Brandon Stevens has done a lot of really good things. He's looked really, really good so far, and really happy about that. Because the spring was rough. The moment he signed, it was very questionable. And this doesn't mean he's going to have a big year, but 10 days in, he's at a really good camp. And many, including myself, as I mentioned, expected this training camp to be a lot of concern around Brandon Stevens. That hasn't been the case. The confidence in him continues to go up as each of these practices go by. And I'm really excited to see what Stevens can do when they face the Giants in the 2 joint practices. So that's what took place today on the field at practice, I should say. Now let's take a look at some quotes and some sound from today's practice. Aaron Glenn met the media today, preseason game this week. Here is what he wants to see from the team in the preseason.
Listen, I want to see exactly what we talked about when it comes to the things we're trying to create during training camp, and that's creating an identity for our guys and what type of advantage we're going to create. And I'm not going to say those things. That's between me and the players, but for the most part, that's what I'm looking at. I'm not really looking at what the score is going to be. It's more, man, are we actually hitting those points that I want to make sure we hit when it comes to the things that we've talked about?
And he's obviously correct, especially that last part, right? Not worried about what the score is going to be. Preseason games, score, win or lose, tie, doesn't mean anything in the grand scheme of things. But from his perspective, you want to see this team start to embody some of that physical, competitive mindset, be a little nasty out there, even if it is third teamers out there. You want to see some of that, and obviously just overall evaluation of some of these young players who will get an opportunity, some of the guys on the roster bubble, some of these position competitions that we've got, whether it's defensive tackle 2. Can anybody start to separate themselves in game at wide receiver? That's something that I'm looking for. And I'll dive a lot more into this when we have our preseason preview pod, which I plan on getting that up on Friday. God, I'm fired up. I know it's only preseason, but the fact that we'll be previewing a football game this week gives you some excitement. And this Sunday will be just 4 Sundays away from Jets Steelers. So a month out, essentially. Exciting times. But that was Glenn on the preseason. Don't have the clip, but Glenn, to open up his press conference, spoke a lot about the green and white scrimmage. Was happy with the defense, very happy with the run game. Saw some positives from Fields and his legs, but also recognized there's work that needs to be done from a pass game perspective. And that segues perfectly into this next clip. This is Aaron Glenn on what he has seen from Justin Fields so far this summer.
I think he's really improving. I really do. And when you go back and you really look at the tape, there are some throws that he missed, but there's also some throws that he made that were really good throws that we have to make sure we catch also. So that goes both ways from his part, where some of those throws he got to make, and some of them guys got to make catches. So, I'm excited about that player. I'm excited about the things that he's going to be able to create for us. And every day, man, he just got to continue to keep chopping wood. And the type of person that he is, he's going to continue to do that.
Looks good on the ground. Passing game still needs improvement. And Glenn mentioned it. There's throws that he should make that he hasn't. Some throws that he hasn't made, of course, or has made that have been impressive. There's certainly been some positives. There's also been some drops mixed in as well. It hasn't all been bad. I still think that's part of the outside view has been Fields has been terrible. No, it's been bumpy, but I think that's kind of to be expected, especially on August 4th. 2 weeks from now, if these same struggles are happening and they don't look good against the Giants, then you could start to be a little concerned. But right now, there's still a lot of time to go. So that was Glenn on those two topics. Glenn also spoke on the offensive line. Very high praise for a unit that has had a very strong summer so far. Here is Glenn on the guys up front.
Very, very impressed with how they operate. Big, strong men. They fit the personality that we want as an offense and how we want to operate. Obviously, we drafted Mimbu as our first pick. We had Olu last year. Our interior is outstanding, and even some of the guys that are in the back of rows are doing a really good job for us. So I'm excited about that group. Still have a lot of time to improve when it comes to communication because they are young, and Mimbo just got here, and Olu didn't start the whole year. So I'm looking forward to seeing those guys continue to get better.
It's been a really nice positive to see how good this offensive line's been. Even the last 2 days, right? Today, they had another strong day running the football. Saturday was a really good practice. And I think what's you also have to note about Saturday is, and today, they're still without John Simpson, right? He's out right now for the next week with that back injury. You're going to get him back into the fold. And I think just to try and spin this offense from a positive perspective, going through a bumpy time right now in training camp, not many offenses are in the bottom of the league who have top 10 offensive line, top 12 offensive lines. There's a really good chance the New York Jets finish this year with a top 12, maybe top 10 if they really exceed offensive line in football. Not really exceeding. They can be a top 10 offensive line. They are, in many ways on paper already are. Now you got to go and prove it. Not many teams stink on offense with an offensive line that good. This is the best offensive line that Fields will play with. And you've already seen them do a lot of really good things running the football. That's going to be the Jets' identity. So that's been a positive. Glenn also did not rule out starters playing on Saturday against Green Bay. Said he'll reveal that later in the week. I don't expect the starters to start, but something to keep an eye on. Every coach, of course, does it differently. We'll see. But something look forward to hearing more about later in the week. So that was Aaron Glenn today. Joe Tippmann also met the media, still in that center competition battle with Josh Myers. With Glenn also talked about today how much he's enjoyed watching that competition unfold so far this summer. But this was Joe Tippmann with a very high review on Justin Fields so far.
Have you observed about Justin Fields throwing the ball?
He's freaking awesome. I mean, he's done a kick-ass job just seeing him, back there, slinging it. And, just the way he carries himself as an athlete, as a quarterback. I mean, I really respect the hell out of him and, what he does and how he kind of prepares himself. And then, it shows on the field what he can do. And it's amazing. And then, just being dynamic as he is, being able, I'm sure you guys saw in the scrimmage the other day, being able to take over the game on his feet. And, it's just I've never played with a dual threat quarterback, so it's an awesome feeling.
So that was Tippmann on Fields, enjoying the practices so far of playing with Fields, considering, of course, mentioning the dual threat a lot there. I still think Tippmann wins the center job. I don't think it's Josh Myers. I would still be very shocked, but it's a very real competition that continues to go on. Quantez Stiggers also had high reviews for Justin Fields and high expectations for what he can do in the Jets this season.
Do you have any early impressions of Justin Fields?
Any early impressions of Justin Fields? That he's very athletic, he's very fast, and he's going to take us to the playoffs. Yeah.
Football gods, if you're listening, let that be the case. Don't see that happening, but Stiggers, definitely some optimism there. I think Stiggers makes this team. I do. I think he's had a nice summer, and I think he makes this team in a depth role. Tough for him, though, to see the field just because of the guys that are in front of him, but he had a good summer last year and has done some good things this year as well in training camp. AVT also met the media here. These are the final two clips before we close things out. This is AVT on how he feels coming out of the offseason and what it's been like playing alongside Armand Membou.
Going into camp, you said that was the best you felt after an offseason. How do you feel like that's translated on the field for you so far?
Yeah, I think I'm very blessed. I was able to get an offseason full of, just training. And I feel really fast, quick, and comfortable out there going in my second year, staying in one position. So right now I'm feeling really comfortable, and, playing with Membou makes it easy too.
Why is that with Membou?
I think with Membou, he has such raw talent. And then I feel like he's almost kind of ahead of his game, and in terms of like technique and then knowing what to do and knowing how to execute a play. So, yeah.
I mentioned this a couple times with AVT, and I think it's also important. I actually mentioned this in the player preview that I did on him. It's finally nice to see AVT, and I think that's something that you have to have confidence in this year. Have a fully healthy offseason, right? This is a guy that the last 2 years prior to last year, he had the torn tricep in 2022, 2023 tore his Achilles. Both of those seasons, most of the offseason was spent rehabbing. Went out there last year, was healthy, had a very good year. Now has had a full normal offseason. And I think that's a big factor in sometimes how players can have success. And another reason why I just agree with keeping AVT, right? There's that discussion earlier on in the offseason, very early in the offseason before free agency, the draft, when you tried to piece together what this offensive line would look like, how they would address right tackle. Do you move AVT at right tackle, bring in a guard? Whether that was drafting a guard, signing guard, whatever. Another reason why I really like that. He's very successful at right guard. He's been very successful at right guard. And just having him in that spot, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. That tandem in the interior of John Simpson, Joe Tippmann, and AVT last year was one of the better interiors in the NFL, especially him and Simpson. A lot of really good things from those two, right? Why change that? And that's why I was happy they kept him there. And clearly, the chemistry so far with Armand Membou has been a big positive as well. And AVT, Glenn mentioned it, he might be in for a payday at some point. The Jets are obviously going to have some decisions to make up front on that offensive line. Simpson and AVT, both free agents at the end of this year. There's a chance AVT gets a contract, maybe not before the season, but something that happens during the season. And throw Simpson in that conversation as well. One more clip here from AVT. This was his thoughts on the offensive line as a whole and the physicality that they bring.
The first thing is physicality. I think each of us, come into work every day and our example of that, the physicality. Then also, just our communication up front, I feel like has been, really key to the execution, especially when you got a guy in there like Tip, going on his third year, kind of knows how to run this type of offense. And then Josh Myers does a really good job as well, too. So just physicality.
That's what this team wants. That's what Aaron Glenn wants. Physical, nasty, competitive, all those words, right? And so far, this offensive line has done that, and that's where you've seen some of the results this summer. Excited for that group. So that'll do it. Another episode in the books. Appreciate you all, as always, for the support. Thank you so much for tuning in here to another Jets training camp recap. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. What are your biggest takeaways from day number 10 of New York Jets training camp? We'll be back here tomorrow recapping day number 11. So stay tuned for that. Appreciate you all as always. And until next time, JETS. Jets, Jets, Jets.